All right, let's keep moving on to a third video in our Saas Analytics series. In the second video, we cover the sign up and the login, so basically the acquisition steps. And in this video, we're going to focus on the onboarding, so on step 3 here. Now, onboarding for a typical SaaS product typically means a series of steps after a user signs up. So they create an account, and then they have to complete some kind of funnel to be able to use the product, right? This is where they might create a profile, they might upload photos, they might go through a product tour. It kind of varies. And then for companies, this might mean a completely self-designed, self-contained funnel, right? With special screens, special pages that if the user doesn't complete, they can't actually use the product. Or it might mean being guided through just the regular product through like tooltips or things like that. There's a lot of different variations you can take. Nonetheless, in our analytics, we want to know the performance of this onboarding funnel, right? So when we look at the events that we want to track here, we're looking at the what we call onboarding events. So let's imagine that you have a funnel, and the funnel has 5 steps, right? And for the user to be considered onboarded, they need to complete all the 5 steps, right? And they come right after, right? So we'll have 5 events here. And under each event, we can have onboarding step 1, onboarding step 2, step 3, and so on. And we can have any relevant properties under each event. Then for the user attributes, it's always helpful to track the onboarding completion. That is, has the user onboarded successfully. This eventually becomes useful in things like notifications, where you can say, okay, let me send a special kind of messages or stop sending special kind of messages to anyone who has already onboarded, right? It's common for SaaS products to use, let's say, email drips to complement any existing onboarding funnel. So you can stop those drips by having just a flag, a true or false flag here. And then the other thing that we might see here in terms of qualitative data will be something like user recordings, right? So being able to watch users go through the funnel can be quite helpful. It can give you a sense of where users are getting stuck. Typically, when we see a lot of issues in onboarding funnels, they tend to come to expectations or the design, the UX design of the funnel itself. That is, a user sees something and they're not sure what that means. They're not sure why they should do it or why they should care. Why do they need to create a profile right now? Why can't they just do that later? Things like that. So session recordings can actually give you a sense of that, because then you'll be able to see if users are spending an unusual amount of time on a step that, in your perspective, is simple. Just a couple of input fields, enter information, move on, and your user gets stuck. So that would be actually quite helpful, right? In this case, for data tracking, this can actually be done server side, and this will actually be the recommendation. So in the acquisition side, we saw a lot of things that needed to be done client side, just to be able to manage identities properly. In this case, we can actually start moving server side, and that can be quite helpful, especially if you have a cross-platform product. That is, you have a product available on web, iOS, Android, and so on. Trying to implement everything always client-side will become a little tedious, especially if the same action can happen on any platform. So this is where we can start to build some expertise around tracking events through the server side. If you can't do that, if client-side is your recommended approach or what you want to do, that's fine. Just be aware of that potential limitation. And our tool stack is similar to what we saw before. We have segment, of course, so we still want to funnel all the data through segment. And then the main tool that we use for analysis here will actually be Amplitude, right? Which we saw a little bit before in the acquisition video. So here's our segment. Again, I won't cover this in detail. I'll cover this quite a bit during the acquisition, but same thing, the data will flow here, whether it's from a client side like JavaScript or a new source like a server-side source, and it will flow down into all the different tools. And we specifically care about Amplitude in this case as our behavior analysis tool. So jumping into Amplitude, really the report here that we care about is the funnel analysis report. And it looks like this before we show you how it's built. So we have the series of steps, and then we can see that drop off from step to step, right? Now in this case, our steps, right, is the user starts to sign up, they complete the sign up. We saw this event quite a bit during the acquisition video, right? This is a pretty critical event. And then we have all the onboarding events. And you can see here we like to prefix events with the word onboarding, and that just makes them easier to find. It organizes nicely, actually. A lot of tools will organize events alphabetically so that you can find them all in one section. So this is just a minor detail that becomes quite helpful when you start working through data. So we have what the what the steps are, and of course this is relevant to the product itself that we're looking at, this job search product. And then the last event here is a profile approve, right? So we have 3, 6, 7, 7 onboarding events in this case, right? Something interesting about Amplitude is that we can actually look at the events in any order or this specific order, right? I have seen probably quite a bit of issues when you actually have to force an order, right? When you say, okay, users have to complete this one and then that one and then this one and this one. Basically what that means is if for some reason you have an optional event, let's imagine that you're asking the users to enter a credit card, but it's optional, right? And you have an event called Onboarding, enter credit card, but if they can skip it, then all of a sudden now the steps down below they won't be counted if you're forcing it to be a very specific order, right? Because it's looking for that flow, and if any event is skipped, then your numbers will be slightly off. So any order is kind of helpful because then users can technically go back and redo events, and they'll still be counted as a whole. Okay. Then the funnel itself, this is what it looks like, right? So we see a number, then we see the drop-off. The biggest drop-off, of course, is when we see starters sign up but don't complete it. And then we go into the onboarding itself. In this case, this onboarding is actually quite simple, quite well done. You can see there's not a lot of big drop-offs, except maybe from the last step or the second to last step to the very last step, right? To get the profile approved, right? And of course, just like before, we can click into things and we can see, the 57 users who completed it. We can also see the 26 users who didn't complete it, and we can see some of the other things. Something that's interesting actually is something like user paths. So we can see, for users who complete a profile approved, what do they do after, right? What are some of the paths they take after? And that path exploration can start to help us understand maybe a better onboarding flow, right? Which is typically one of the goals. You start with something that works, and then you want to move on to something that might be a much better optimized. Of course, before here, we'll have conversions by dates, right? We have average time in between steps, right? And so on. So we're able to segment things here. And that's really it. We can also see conversion over time. So we can see the overall conversion actually of the funnel over time. So we can see if that's getting better, if that's getting worse over the last 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, or so on. And then time to convert is typically also a helpful report. We like to see, are users taking a long time to go through this funnel, or is this something that happened within a few minutes? And this is something that you likely want to play around a little bit in the dates. You might have outliers that are really bringing down your averages. That is, you might find 95% of all your users complete the funnel in a few minutes, but then you have 5%, a very small amount of users who take 25 days, right? That is, they started and they come back 20 days later. So you want to play around here a little bit of time to get a sense of how long it's taking to convert, right? And we can, of course, see the conversion time between specific steps too. So we have a lot of flexibility here, and of course, just like before, we can segment this even further. We might want to look at only users on iOS or only on Android or web, or maybe from a specific country and so on. So all our segmentation options that we covered a little bit in the first video are still available here. And this is it, right? This is what onboarding is for our series and what the goal is in terms of our data.
Hey, Julian here from Measure School. If you want to follow along with the next video in this series, then we have it linked up right over there. And if you want to learn more about the data-driven way of digital marketing, then definitely subscribe to our channel right over there. Now, my name is Julian. See you in the next one.